In this video, I'll go step by step creating a monkey-style jump animation. Before we get started, double-click on the Move tool. In the tool setting, set the orientation axis as object. Set the object axis for both the Rotate tool and the Scale tool. The object axis will allow the controllers to move and to rotate based its original axis, no matter how it has been placed. In some cases, it can help us get cleaner values on the controllers. With the World Orientation axis, the tool ignores the controller and joints aiming axis, and sometimes it's difficult to rotate the controller in the desired direction. At frame 1, we'll create the first pose, and we'll only work on the legs. Move the foot controllers. When you are done with one controller, hit the S key to create a keyframe before you move on to the next controller. When you are done with the right foot controller, hit the S key and create a keyframe as well. Move the hip controller down a little bit so the leg joints can be relaxed. Move the knee controllers forward. We only need 45 frames for this animation, so you can shrink down the timeline. At frame 8, we'll create the second pose. That's when the character crouch and prepare to jump. Move the hip controller down and hit the S key to create a keyframe. At frame 13, we'll create the third pose, and that's when the character starts to jump. Move up the hip controller and hit the S key to create a keyframe. Select the foot controllers, create a keyframe at frame 8. At frame 13, move the foot controllers up and rotate each controller to let the toes touching the ground. Hit the S key to create a keyframe. At frame 19, we'll create the fourth keyframe, and that's when the character reaching the highest spot. Move up the hip controller, hit the S key to create a keyframe, and we'll move on to the feet. I noticed that I forgot to create a keyframe on the left foot at frame 13, so I have to fix that first. At frame 19, zero out the foot controller's rotation value so we can move the controllers up vertically. Move them up and hit the S key to create a keyframe. The legs are twisted, and that's because the knees are aiming down. Move up the knee controllers and the legs should be good. Rotate the foot controller and hit the S key to overwrite the keyframe so the changes will be saved. At frame 26, we will create the fifth pose, the landing pose. Select the hip controller and the foot controllers. Hold the Shift key and click on frame 13. Right-click and copy that keyframe. Go to frame 26, right-click and paste the keyframe. Zero out the rotation value on the foot controllers. The feet are not on the ground, so we may duplicate the values on frame 8 and overwrite to frame 26. Move down the hip controllers to where the leg joints can be relaxed. Hit the S key to create a keyframe. At frame 32, we will create the sixth pose, the down pose after the jump. Move down the hip controller and hit the S key to create a keyframe. The knee joint acting weird at here, but it will be a easy fix. At frame 39, we will create the seventh keyframe, the stand-up pose. Select the hip controller, we can just duplicate the first keyframe to frame 39. And we can move down the controller a little bit and then hit the S key to overwrite the keyframe. At frame 45 is the eighth keyframe, where the character will resume to the initial pose. We can duplicate the first keyframe to here. The leg shakes a little bit, and we'll fix that. Select the hip controller, go to Windows, Animation Editor, Graph Editor. The dots are the keyframes we created on the hip controller, and the curves are the motion path on each channel. Select all keyframes. Apply an easy ease, and that will smooth our animation a little bit. Let's check each channel. Here's the Translate Y channel. We can manually smooth the third and the fifth keyframe by rotate their tangents. Now, the animation is much smoother. The body keeps straight when she jumps, and that's not realistic. Let's add some rotations. Select the hip controller. At frame 8, rotate it forward. You can go to the channel box and type a number on its rotation X channel. I type 20. Don't forget to hit the S key to save the changes. At frame 13, we want her body to keep straight as she jumps. When she's at the highest position, at frame 19, we can rotate her body forward. I selected the hip controller and typed 20 on its rotation X channel. At frame 32, I also typed 20 on its rotation X channel. Now, her hip joint should bend 3 times in the jump cycle. Select the first and the second spine controllers. Create the first keyframe on frame 1 and the second keyframe on frame 8. At frame 8, rotate both controllers in 20 degrees along the X-axis. Create the third keyframe at frame 13 and the fourth keyframe at frame 19. At frame 19, rotate both controllers in 12 degrees along the X-axis. At frame 13, zero out the rotation values on both controllers. Now, we should have a better rotation animation. At frame 19, we want the character to look up. Select the neck and the head controllers and rotate them up along the X-axis. Hit the S key to create a keyframe. We only want the neck and the head to rotate up when she's jump. Zero out the rotation values at frame 13 and create a keyframe. Zero out the rotation values at frame 26 and create a keyframe. At frame 26, also zero out the rotation values on the spine controllers so the character can stand straight. For the chest controller, create a keyframe at frame 13 and zero out the rotation values. Create a keyframe at frame 19 and rotate in 12 degrees along the X-axis. Create a keyframe at frame 26 and zero out the rotation values. Now, we should have a better rotation animation. At frame 32, select the spine joints and rotate them in 8 degrees along the X-axis. Hit the S key to create a keyframe. Select the chest joint and rotate it in 8 degrees as well. Select all 3 joints at frame 39, zero out the rotation values and create a keyframe. Create a keyframe at frame 45. We can type a small value at frame 39 so she can slightly rotate her body as she resumes to the initial standing pose. Now, we can start working on the arms. At frame 1, pose the 2 hand controllers and hit the S key to create a keyframe. I moved the left leg to the back, so I will bring the left arm to her front. Move her right arm to the back. Create the second keyframe at frame 8 and the third keyframe at frame 13. At frame 13, as she jumps, move her arms up. It makes her work harder on the jump. At frame 8, move her arms down and let her prepare for a big jump. At frame 26, as she just landed, we can duplicate the first keyframe to here. Paste the first keyframe to frame 39 and frame 45 as well. At frame 39, move the hand controllers down a little bit. The hand is shaky and we will fix that later. At frame 19, bring the hand controllers up. We want to create a monkey-style jump, and this frame is the key pose. Raise both arms above the shoulders and make her look like Pounce to someone. At frame 32, create a keyframe. At frame 26, move the hand controllers up. At frame 32, move the hand controllers down. The arms are shaky, and we will go to the graph editor to fix it. Select all keyframes on the hand controllers, apply the easy ease. Now the arm animation looks smooth. We want the legs to hold in the air for more time, so we can add 2 more keyframes for the foot controllers. Go to frame 16, move the foot controllers up, and create a keyframe. Now the legs will bend earlier than before. Go to frame 22, move the foot controllers up, and create a keyframe. Now the legs will extend later than before. That way, she hold her pose for a longer time and make the jump look stronger. Select both foot controllers in the graph editor, select all keyframes and apply the easy ease. Select the left foot controller in the graph editor, check each channel's motion curve. The Translate X curve looks good. The Translate Y curve also looks good. On the Translate Z curve, at the 5th keyframe, the foot doesn't have to shift backward on the Z axis. Hold the Shift key and use the mouse middle button to bring the value up. The Rotation X curve looks good. Select the left foot controller. The Translate Y curve looks good. On the Translate Z curve, at the 4th keyframe, the foot doesn't have to shift forward on the Z axis. Hold the Shift key and use the mouse middle button to bring the value down to 0. The Rotation X curve looks good. Select the hip controller, select all keyframes and apply the easy ease. The Translate Y curve indicates how the hip controller moves up and down. The Rotation X curve indicates how the hip controller rotates forward at frame 8, 19, and 32. The path is smooth and all look good. Select the spine controllers, the chest, the neck, and the head controllers. Go to Graph Editor and select all keyframes, apply the easy ease to smooth the animation. Select the first spine controller and check its motion paths. The Rotation X curve indicates how the controller rotates forward at frame 8, 19, and 32. The path is smooth and all look good. The motion paths on the second spine controller look good. The chest controller starts to rotate forward at frame 13, and the motion path looks good. The neck and the head controllers only rotate one time, and the motion path looks good. Since the eyeballs are aiming to the eye controllers, we'll keep the controllers in front of her face. Instead of creating keyframes on the eye controllers, we can parent the eye controller to the head controller. Now, the eye controller should follow the head controller. Select the knee controllers. Bring them down at frame 13 and create a keyframe. Copy that keyframe to frame 26. Select the knee controllers and select all keyframes in Graph Editor. Apply the easy ease. Now, we have created a monkey-style jump animation.